Today, we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating story of the MS Batory, the Polish ocean liner that became the pride of the Polish merchant marine. She was the flagship of the Gdynia America line, proudly named after Stefan Batory, the 16th century King of Poland. Later, in 1951, she became the flagship of the Polish ocean lines and the entire Polish merchant fleet. Batory, along with her sister ship, the MS Piłsudski, were Poland's most beloved ocean liners, capturing the hearts of many who sailed on them. Hello everyone, it's Jamie from Old Shipping Lines, and in today's video we'll cover the entire story of the MS Batory from her construction to her final days at the scrapyard. The vessel would be owned by Gdynia America Line, a Polish-Danish partnership founded in 1934 as the successor to Polskie Transatlantyki Towarzystwo Okrętowe, initially established to transport Polish migrants to the United States. To support this new venture, Gdynia America Line commissioned a new vessel. The MS Batory was built between 1934 and 1935 at the Cantieri Riuniti del Adriatico shipyard in Monfalcone, Italy. Looking at the specifics of this vessel, she had a gross tonnage of 14,287 gross registered tons. Her length measured 526.25 feet with a beam of 70.87 feet. The ship was powered by two Sulzer diesel engines driving twin screws, which allowed her to achieve a speed of 18 knots. She also had a sister ship, the MS Piłsudski. The Batory was one of the most well-known Polish ships of all time. She was launched on the 3rd of July 1935 and began her regular service on the Gdynia-New York route in May 1936, with her maiden voyage taking place on the 18th of May 1936. By 1939, she had transported over 3,000 passengers across the Atlantic. On September 5th, 1939, the Batory arrived in New York from Gdynia with 642 passengers, including many Polish patriots. After disembarking, the ship remained anchored in the Hudson River due to crew-related issues. Rumors circulated that the British Admiralty intended to requisition the vessel for transporting munitions from Canada to England, which heightened concerns about the threat of U-boat attacks. As a result, 200 crew members refused to follow orders. When local authorities intervened, the dissenting crew members were escorted off the ship, leaving approximately 100 remaining on board. Despite these challenges, the Batory eventually set sail for a Canadian port on September 22nd, 1939. During the remainder of the war, she operated as both a troop ship and a hospital ship for the Allied Navy. In 1940, she, alongside Crowbury, played a crucial role in transporting Allied forces during the Norwegian campaign. She was also one of the last ships to depart Saint-Jean-de-Luz during the final evacuation of Polish troops from France. In addition to her military duties, she was tasked with the secret transportation of valuable Polish treasures to Canada for safekeeping. She participated in the Dunkirk evacuation in late May and early June, rescuing 2,500 people. In subsequent evacuations, she carried as many as 6,000 individuals at once. Between June and July, she covertly transported a significant portion of the UK's gold reserves, worth £40 million, from Greenock, Scotland to Montreal, Canada, as part of Operation Fish. On the 5th of August 1940, she departed Liverpool with convoy WS2 evacuating 477 children to Sydney, Australia, under the Children's Overseas Reception Board, continuing this mission until the war's conclusion. She sailed through Cape Town, India, and Singapore, ultimately arriving in Sydney with 300 troops aboard. The journey was filled with joy, music, and laughter, earning Batory the nickname The Singing Ship, which later became the title of a book about the ship. In 1942, Batory played a key role in the Allied invasion of Oran, Algeria, as part of Operation Torch. That same year, she transported troops to India and then participated in the Allied invasion of Sicily and southern France, Operation Dragoon, where she served as the flagship for General Jean de Lattre de Tassigny, Commander-in-Chief of the French Army. Despite several attacks from both the ground and the air, the ship managed to avoid significant damage. Renowned as the Lucky Ship for her successful military career during World War II, Batory was a sister ship to the ill-fated Pilsudski, which tragically sank in November 1939 off the east coast of Scotland. After completing her military service, the Batory returned to civilian operations, undergoing a refit in Antwerp from April 1946 to March 1947. Though the process was delayed by a shipboard fire during the work, the ship was now configured to carry 450 first-class passengers and 450 in tourist class. It is recorded that Batory set sail from Southampton on April 5th, 1947, on the North Atlantic route. The Batory became a regular visitor to Gdynia, Copenhagen, Southampton, and New York. In the early days of the Cold War, the ship became involved in a series of incidents that led to the New York Port Authority refusing to handle her. Since 1947, the ship had been under the control of communist authorities, including the Urząd Bezpieczeństwa and, to a lesser extent, the Communist United Polish Workers' Party. The captain of Batory had little real authority, with Peter Semiel, the second in command, who also held the title of Cultural Officer, effectively becoming the ship's true leader. Third in command was Kaminski, a captain in the UB, who maintained constant communication with Warsaw and was responsible for running an extensive spy network aboard the ship. The impact on the crew was significant, with over 100 crew members deserting in response to the new regime. Those who attempted to desert and were caught faced a grim fate. Numerous stories circulated in the press about the extensive searches carried out on board the Batory when she arrived in New York. The situation worsened upon the ship's return to Gdynia, where she was not allowed to dock until the UB and Frontier Guard had boarded, met with Semiel and Kaminski, and conducted a thorough search of the ship. During this time, the crew was detained in the dining room until the searches were complete. Those found in possession of subversive Western materials received a black mark on their record for a first offense, while a second offense led to immediate dismissal from service. On May 14, 1949, Gerhard Eisler, labeled by the U.S. Congress as America's #1 communist, was arrested on board the Batory by Scotland Yard detectives as the ship arrived in Southampton. Eisler had been sentenced to prison for his communist activities, but jumped bail after his legal appeals failed. Using a visitor's ticket, he boarded the Batory on May 6th in New York. After his arrest in Southampton, British authorities rejected the U.S. extradition request, allowing him to travel to the German Democratic Republic. Upon Batory's arrival in Gdynia on May 19th, a Polish inquiry was launched on the ship's return to New York in early June. She was heavily guarded by U.S. Border Patrol. Passengers were detained at Ellis Island, and 3 crew members, suspected of aiding Eisler, were interrogated before being allowed back on board. It was also reported that the Batory had transported other Communist Party members, Boleslaw Gebert and Leo Ksiki, out of the U.S. On February 19, 1949, while docked in New York, 19 seamen deserted, according to immigration officials. On August 16, 1950, upon arrival in Southampton, 2 Americans were removed from the Batory. Howard Campbell was found to be a stowaway, while William Newton had been rescued after his seaplane made an emergency landing near the ship, about 75 miles off the coast of New York. Newton was later charged with transporting a stolen aircraft in foreign commerce, with bail set at $50,000 US. The seaplane, valued at $2,600 US, was claimed by the Batory as salvage and left in England. On September 12, 1950, longshoremen in New York refused to load cargo onto the Batory, which included 86 cases of streptomycin intended for the treatment of tubercular children. As a result, the ship departed with 542 passengers, but no cargo. On October 10, 1950, Czeslaw Grzelak, vice president of Gdynia America Lines and operator of the Batory, was placed aboard the ship for deportation to Poland. Grzelak, who had entered the U.S. in 1940, was deported for being a member of a communist organization. On February 1, 1951, American shipwrights refused to carry out repairs on the Batory while she was docked in New York. Effective April 1, 1951, the Batory was refused access to the port of New York, prompting the ship to begin a new service in September 1951. This service was eventually halted by the Suez Crisis and the canal's closure in 1956. In retaliation, Polish authorities banned the American Scantic Line from accessing Polish ports. The first sailing of the new route began on September 17, 1951, traveling via Southampton, Gibraltar, Port Said, Suez, Aden, and Bombay. Before launching the Poland-India service in August 1951, the Batory made several shuttle runs between Calais and Dunkirk to Gdynia, Poland, transporting many young people to the Communist World Youth Festival in Berlin. During this time, British and American authorities were actively impeding the movement of Western communists into East Germany. In May 1953, the Batory arrived at Hebburn on Tyne for dry docking and a refit. During this time, Captain Jan Kwiklinski, who had served on the ship since 1946, left in July to seek political asylum in England, fearing arrest upon the ship's return to Gdynia, aware that he was under surveillance and facing potential trial. Kwiklinski secretly traveled to London, then formally requested asylum at a police station. He was briefly held in Brixton Prison while his request was processed. The story broke when the British pilot noticed the captain's absence after taking the ship out of Tyne. Kwieciński never returned to Poland, and although his family faced harassment by the Polish authorities, he eventually emigrated to the US, gaining citizenship in 1960. On October 28, 1954, while sailing westbound, north of Tobruk, the Batory was struck by two massive waves, reportedly 20 feet high. The waves swept 3 seamen overboard to their deaths, and a fourth was fatally injured. After a 1957 refit in Bremerhaven, which saw the accommodation change to 76 first class and 740 tourist class passengers, the Batory returned to the North Atlantic route, now serving Montreal instead of New York. During the summer, Montreal and Quebec were the destination ports, while Halifax handled the ship in the winter. By the 1960s, however, air travel began to diminish the viability of transatlantic passenger services. On December 28, 1965, the Batory arrived in Boston with 548 Iron Curtain immigrants on board, marking the largest group to arrive at a US port since World War II. In early December 1968, the Batory completed her last regular transatlantic crossing. Then, in mid-February 1969, the ship was honored with a farewell ceremony at Tilbury on February 20th, attended by some of the individuals who had been evacuated to Australia as children aboard Batory during the Blitz. After retiring, the Batory was turned into a floating hotel, restaurant, and museum ship in Gdynia for 2 years. However, the venture proved to be unprofitable, and the ship was eventually sold for $570,000 to a scrapyard in Hong Kong. She made her final one-way voyage in 1971. As we reflect on the remarkable story of the MS Batory, it's clear that this ship was much more than just a vessel. She was a symbol of resilience, hope, and courage. From her days as the pride of the Polish merchant marine to her vital role in wartime evacuations, Batory's legacy will always be remembered by those whose lives she touched. Though her final voyage took her to the scrapyard, her story lives on in the hearts of those who sailed aboard her and in the history of Poland's maritime heritage. And that marks the end of a video, my friends. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now, if you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing to the channel, as that would help out the channel a lot. Now, if you have any thoughts, comments or questions, please leave them in the comment section down below, as I absolutely love reading your comments. And please let me know in the comment section down below as well what ships you would like me to cover in the future. Now be as well sure to check out our social media pages. We are on Twitter, we are on Instagram, and we also recently have a website, oldshippinglines.com, where we have articles of the ships we cover and we have book reviews as well. I think you will enjoy the website very much. Now, with that out of the way, guys, I wish you all a good night or day, wherever you are. Stay safe, stay happy, and we will see each other on the next video. Goodbye, my friends.